All right, so today we're diving into something that's really shaking up construction in the UK,
Hmm.
modular buildings.
Yeah.
And we're going really deep on this blog post. It's called Why Modular Buildings Are Transforming Commercial Spaces in the UK.
Okay.
And trust me, this is way more interesting than just like, prefab sheds or something.
Oh yeah. It's much more dynamic than that.
Okay.
What's really fascinating to me is how modular construction is kind of tapping into this need for spaces that are adaptable, especially in a world that's changing so rapidly.
For sure.
And they're sustainable as well.
Yeah, and I think that's such a key point because it's not just about the building itself, it's about how it fits into the bigger picture.
Hmm.
So for anyone listening who maybe isn't super familiar with modular buildings,
Right.
can you just give us like a quick definition of what makes a building modular?
Sure. So basically, you're building key components offsite in a controlled factory setting. So these become your building blocks, and then they're shipped to the site
Hmm.
and assembled there.
It's like a giant Lego set.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a giant 3D puzzle, but with much higher stakes, of course.
Much higher stakes for sure. And speaking of getting into the details, this blog post actually references another guide.
Oh, right.
It's called The Complete Guide to How Modular Buildings Are Constructed.
Oh, okay.
So if anyone out there really wants to get super technical,
Yeah.
that's a great resource. But for us,
Definitely.
let's focus on, why are people so excited about modular buildings right now? This blog post highlights like 4 main advantages that are
Yeah.
making them so popular in the UK.
And I think it's important to note it's not just hype.
Yeah.
There are some serious benefits driving this trend, and they're all interconnected.
Mhm.
You've got speed, you've got sustainability, you've got flexibility,
Yeah.
and then this really smart use of technology throughout the entire process.
Okay, so let's break those down a bit because
Yeah, let's unpack that.
I think the most obvious one is speed,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like construction delays are a nightmare for any business.
Absolutely. And that's where modular construction gets really interesting because it can be up to 50% faster
Oh,
than
yeah.
traditional building methods.
That's huge.
Yeah, and the reason is you can have site prep happening at the same time that those modules are being built off-site.
Right?
So it's this parallel process that cuts down on so much downtime.
So it's not even just saving time, it's also like minimizing that disruption,
Exactly.
which I imagine has a knock-on effect on costs, on employee morale, on all sorts of things.
Precisely. Yeah. And then thinking about sustainability, the UK has this ambitious goal of reaching net zero carbon emissions.
Mm-hmm.
And the construction industry is a huge contributor to that carbon footprint.
Right.
So modular building is offering some compelling solutions in that area.
Like what specifically? I'm thinking just less waste overall just seems like a no-brainer.
Oh, absolutely. So you're building these units in a controlled environment, right? So you can optimize the materials you're using, minimize those offcuts, and you just have a much tighter handle on waste management overall.
So like built-in efficiency from the start.
Exactly. And beyond that, these buildings are often designed with energy efficiency in mind from the get-go.
So we're talking like better insulation, maybe even like integrating renewable energy sources like solar panels, things like that.
Absolutely. All of those things. And all of that ties directly into cost savings for the businesses that are going to be using these spaces.
Mm.
So it's a really smart investment, not just an ethical one.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this idea of flexibility that the blog post keeps highlighting.
Yeah.
Because I think, businesses, especially in the last few years, have had to adapt so much.
Constantly changing. Yeah.
Yeah, so how does that flexibility actually play out with a modular building?
Well, think about how much the traditional office setup is kind of going extinct, right?
Yeah, the cubicle farm is on its way out.
It's dying out, exactly. So
Yeah.
companies now want spaces that foster collaboration, that encourage creativity, and actually prioritize employee well-being.
Right. And so you can literally change the space as your needs change.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can add modules, you can reconfigure the layouts. It's almost like having a living, breathing workspace that can evolve alongside your company.
So you're not locked into a specific design.
Exactly.
And that must be so appealing for companies in sectors that are constantly growing or pivoting.
Right. If you need to add a collaborative space or a quiet zone or even downsize temporarily, modular design makes that process so much smoother.
And it seems like it's a good way to almost like future-proof your workspace.
Yeah, exactly.
And then finally, there's the technology angle, which I'm guessing is a bit more than just having, fancy gadgets in the building.
It's way more fundamental than that. Modular construction really relies on things like building information modeling.
Okay, I've heard of BIM, but to be honest, I'm not totally sure what it involves.
Okay, so basically you're creating a digital twin of the building
Mhm.
before you even break ground.
Oh,
So you can model every detail, you can anticipate any potential problems, and the collaboration across teams is just seamless.
so it's not just about the design, it's about communication and coordination throughout that whole process.
Precisely. And that precision is carried through to the factory floor where these modules are being built.
Okay.
You're talking about automated systems, robotic precision. It's light years away from traditional on-site construction in terms of accuracy.
It sounds incredibly efficient. So
Hmm.
we've got speed, sustainability, flexibility, tech-driven
It's a
precision.
well-oiled machine.
Yeah. But how does this actually translate to different industries? Because I imagine offices are probably the most obvious example, but even within that, there's so much variation.
Yeah, and offices are definitely a big one, but this approach isn't limited to one specific type of building.
Right.
This blog post looks at how all sorts of sectors are using these advantages,
Yeah.
from offices and retail spaces to even healthcare facilities.
Wow. Okay. So let's dive into some of those real-world applications then,
Yeah, let's get specific.
because I think that's what really brings it to life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Offices seem like the most obvious starting point.
Sure.
But even within offices, there's such a range now.
Oh, yeah, and that traditional cubicle farm is going extinct.
It's on its way out for sure.
Yeah, companies want spaces that foster collaboration, encourage creativity,
Mm.
and really prioritize employee well-being these days.
So how does modular design support all of that?
Well, with modular construction, you can really tailor the space to the needs of the people who are actually going to be using it.
Okay.
And that level of customization wasn't always possible with traditional building methods.
So if a company wants to have breakout spaces or quiet zones or even things like wellness areas,
Mm-hmm.
that's where modular design comes in.
Exactly. It becomes less about imposing a preset structure
Right.
and more about creating an environment that supports different work styles and promotes a positive company culture.
It makes the office work for the employees, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And that must be incredibly appealing in today's,
Yeah,
constantly shifting work landscape.
it is.
Okay, so let's move on to retail because that's another sector where I can see this making a big impact.
Oh, absolutely. I think about pop-up shops, for instance.
Yeah.
Modular construction is perfect for those short-term, high-impact campaigns.
Right, because you need to set it up quickly, get people excited, and then it might be gone in a few weeks.
Exactly. And it's also gaining traction for permanent retail spaces as well because of the speed and customization that it offers.
So retail's all about capturing attention,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to create a unique storefront quickly is a huge advantage.
Absolutely. And then we can't forget about those temporary structures as well.
Like what kind of things?
So things like construction site offices, event spaces, even emergency facilities.
So it's almost like having a toolkit of building blocks that you can just deploy and then reconfigure.
Exactly. And that adaptability extends to sectors like healthcare, where speed and compliance are absolutely critical.
So you could build a temporary clinic
Hmm.
or even a permanent healthcare facility using this kind of construction.
Absolutely. And because these buildings are built to these very precise specifications,
Right.
they can easily meet those really strict regulatory standards in healthcare
Mm-hmm.
while still being tailored to the needs of the patients and the staff.
Wow. The range of applications is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is.
But I think before we move on, we should address some of the myths around modular buildings.
Okay, yeah, let's debunk some of those myths.
Because I think there are still some misconceptions out there.
Definitely.
Like some people still think that they're not as durable as a
Yeah.
traditional building.
That's a really common one, but it's just not true anymore.
Okay.
Modern modular construction uses really high quality materials and techniques,
Mm.
and honestly, they can be just as durable, if not more so, than buildings built with traditional methods.
It seems like people are holding on to that image of like,
Right, yeah.
the flimsy portable classroom or
The
something.
temporary classroom, yeah, those days are long gone.
Okay.
Modern modular buildings are built to last.
That's good to hear. And what about the idea that they all look the same?
Yeah, so many people imagine these like cookie cutter boxes, right?
Right.
But actually, with modular construction, you have a lot of design freedom.
Okay.
You can customize the facade, you can customize the layout, the finishes.
Mm.
There's really no limit to the aesthetic possibilities.
It's about busting those
Yeah,
stereotypes.
exactly.
And then finally, there's the myth that modular construction isn't sustainable.
Right. And we've already talked about the reduced waste
Hmm.
and energy efficiency aspects, but it goes even further than that.
Heck yeah.
Modular construction often utilizes recycled and recyclable materials as well.
Okay.
So it's really ticking a lot of those sustainability boxes.
And then there's that potential to deconstruct and reuse the modules,
Right.
which just adds another layer of sustainability.
Exactly. So it's clear that this isn't just a passing fad, you know?
Mm.
Modular construction is addressing some very real needs in a really smart and forward-thinking way.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface here.
We have.
There's so much more to unpack.
Yeah.
From real-world case studies to the impact that this trend is having on the UK as a whole.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're going to be diving into in part 2.
Okay.
We're going to explore some fascinating examples of companies who are using modular construction
Cool.
to their advantage across all sorts of industries.
I'm excited to hear about it. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. It's one thing to talk about the potential of modular buildings, but for me, I always need to see it in action to really be convinced. So let's get into some real-world examples.
Yeah, let's do it. We've got some really interesting case studies
Okay.
that show how companies are using this approach to solve problems, boost their brands, and even make a positive impact.
I think the one that really jumped out at me was this office complex.
Oh, yeah?
It was for a tech company in London. And I'm always so fascinated by how these tech companies design their workspaces.
Yeah. It's like a reflection of their whole culture, right?
Exactly. And this project was such a good example of that. Like how they use modular design to make it functional,
Yeah.
but also really inspiring.
Yeah. They wanted a space that could grow with them, and they were really big on sustainability as well.
Okay, so how did modular help them achieve both of those things?
Yeah.
Like, was it just about being able to add units as they expanded?
I mean, that was part of it, but it's much more than that.
Right.
They were able to use the modular units to create this open plan layout, which is great for collaboration,
Yeah.
but they also included those quiet zones that you were talking about earlier
Nice.
for focused work, and they even have a rooftop garden.
A rooftop garden. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. And they were able to incorporate all these sustainable features like rainwater harvesting and solar panels,
Wow.
which really fits with their company values.
That's awesome.
And the speed of construction meant that they could move into their new office so much faster.
Right, so they can get back to innovating much quicker.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about retail.
Okay.
I read about this fashion brand
Mm-hmm.
that used modular construction to create a pop-up shop
Oh, right.
for a limited edition collection, which just seems like a perfect fit.
It is. Pop-up shops are all about creating that buzz and excitement, and modular construction lets brands do that really quickly and efficiently.
Yeah.
So this particular brand was able to design and build their pop-up in a matter of weeks.
Wow.
And because it was modular, they could easily take it apart and move it to a different location once that campaign was over.
It's like minimizing waste while maximizing impact.
Exactly. And it allows brands to try out different locations and concepts without having to make a huge commitment.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about one more case study that I found really interesting.
Okay.
This one was a bit different. It was a community center
Oh, right. Yeah, I saw that.
that was built using modular units.
Mm-hmm.
And what really stood out to me was how it showed the social impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So this community really needed a new space, for gatherings and activities, but they were working with a limited budget and a really tight timeline.
Right. Those are pretty common challenges.
They are. And modular construction allowed them to create this beautiful and functional center for a fraction of the cost
Wow.
and the time of traditional construction.
That's incredible.
And because the units can be reconfigured, they can adapt the space as the community's needs change.
Oh, that's smart. It's like building in that adaptability from the start.
Exactly, which is so important for a community space.
Yeah, I think these case studies really show how versatile modular construction can be.
They do. It's not just limited to offices or shops.
Right, like from tech offices to pop-up shops to community centers, the possibilities are pretty much endless.
They really are. And it's not even just about the type of building, It's about the problems that this approach can solve. We're seeing it used to tackle housing shortages, to create shelters after disasters, even to build schools in remote areas.
It's pretty amazing. So what for you is like the most significant takeaway for these examples?
I think it's the power of adaptability. Modular construction lets us create buildings that can evolve as our needs and priorities change,
Yeah.
whether it's a business that's growing quickly, a community that's changing, or even a planet facing all these new challenges,
Right.
modular gives us the tools to adapt and respond.
I love that. It's a really good point. But like with any new trend, there are always going to be challenges.
Hmm.
So what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about as modular construction becomes more popular?
That's a great question. I think one thing that comes to mind is the need for more awareness
Oh,
and education about the benefits of this approach.
yeah, because there are still those misconceptions out there.
There are, and we need to show people what's possible.
So we need to get everyone on board, architects, engineers, developers, policymakers.
Absolutely. And like any new technology, there's a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
We need to make sure that construction professionals have the skills and knowledge to actually design and build these high-quality modular structures.
So it's about investing in training and development.
Exactly. And we also need to figure out how to scale up modular construction to meet that growing demand.
Right. So it's not just about building the buildings themselves.
No, it's about the whole ecosystem.
It's about having the manufacturing facilities, the supply chains, the transportation logistics.
Exactly. And as the industry grows, we need to really prioritize quality control, safety standards, and innovation.
Yeah, it's not just about building fast, it's about building well.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've explored the advantages, debunked those myths, looked at some really inspiring case studies,
Mm-hmm.
but what does this all mean for the bigger picture? How is modular construction shaping the UK economically and socially?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll be exploring in part 3.
Okay,
We're going to zoom out and look at the wider implications,
sounds good.
from job creation and economic growth to sustainable development and community resilience.
I'm excited to hear more.
Me too. It's going to be fascinating. The future of construction is being reimagined, and modular building is leading the way.
All right, so stay tuned for part 3, where we'll connect all the dots and see where this trend is heading. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. So we've spent the last 2 parts really getting into the nitty-gritty of modular buildings in the UK.
We have.
We've talked about how they're made the advantages, the challenges on some inspiring real-world examples.
Yeah, it's been a pretty comprehensive deep dive.
It has. And now I think it's time to zoom out a bit and think about the bigger picture.
Okay.
Like, how is this trend actually impacting the UK as a whole,
Mm.
both economically and socially?
That's a really important question, and it's one that a lot of people are thinking about right now because the potential impact is huge.
Okay, well, let's start with the economy then.
Yeah.
How is modular construction affecting the UK economy?
Well, it has the potential to really drive growth.
Okay, how so?
When you think about it, when projects are completed, faster businesses can get up and running sooner. Which means they're contributing to the economy more quickly, they're generating revenue, and they're creating jobs.
So it's not just about saving time, it's about speeding up economic activity.
Exactly. And then there's the job creation aspect itself.
Mm-hmm.
Modular construction needs a skilled workforce,
Right.
from the factory where the modules are built to the people who assemble them on site.
So it's not about replacing traditional construction jobs then?
No, not at all. It's creating new opportunities
Okay.
in a sector that's growing really rapidly. And these are high-skilled jobs,
Mm-hmm.
well-paying jobs, and they're in high demand. So that's good news for workers and for the economy as a whole.
It is. And we've talked a lot about the sustainability of modular buildings themselves.
Yeah.
But is there like a wider environmental benefit as well?
Oh, absolutely. By streamlining those construction processes and reducing waste, modular building is helping the UK reach its sustainability goals.
Okay.
And if you think long term, the fact that you can deconstruct these buildings and reuse the modules,
Right.
that has huge implications for the environmental footprint of the whole construction industry.
It's like building in circularity from the start.
Exactly. It's
Right.
moving away from that take, make, waste model
Yeah.
and towards a more closed loop system.
Which is what everyone's talking about these days.
It is. It's about using resources more efficiently and minimizing waste.
Okay. So we've covered the economic impact,
Yeah.
the environmental impact.
Mm-hmm.
What about the social side of things?
Okay.
How is modular construction affecting communities in the UK?
Well, one area where we're seeing a real difference is affordable housing.
Okay.
Modular construction can deliver high-quality homes at a lower cost and in a shorter time frame.
Right. And that's a major issue in the UK right now.
It is. It's a game changer for addressing those housing shortages and creating more equitable communities.
And with those customizable designs, they can be tailored to different communities.
Absolutely. It's about creating homes that are not just affordable,
Mm-hmm.
but also adaptable and sustainable. We're also seeing modular construction being used to revitalize urban areas
Okay.
and create more vibrant public spaces.
So those mixed-use developments, they combine residential and commercial and community spaces.
Exactly. It's creating spaces where people actually want to live and work and connect, and it's doing it in a way that's efficient, sustainable, and responsive to what the community needs.
So it seems like modular construction is more than just a trend.
It's much more than that.
It's like a solution to some of the biggest challenges that the UK is facing,
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it.
from housing to the economy to the environment.
Absolutely. And the really exciting thing is we're only just getting started as the technology keeps developing and more people see the benefits.
Yeah.
I think modular construction is going to play an even bigger role in shaping the UK's future.
That's a really great point.
Yeah.
What's the one thing you want listeners to take away from today's deep dive?
I want them to see modular construction as a way to make positive change. It's a way to build better, faster, and more sustainably. And it can help us create a brighter future for the UK.
A future that's more prosperous, equitable, and resilient,
Exactly.
and maybe even inspire some of our listeners to explore how it could transform their own industries.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what the deep dive is all about, right?
It is. It's about sparking curiosity, exploring new ideas, and helping people make informed decisions.
Well said.
All right, well, that wraps up our deep dive into modular buildings in the UK. I hope you found it as fascinating as we have.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.